Listen, Mr. Policeman, I started to explain. I did not cause no trouble, and I did not raise no Cain. He hit me with his billy club, and he cursed me up and down. He says, "Shut up, you black bastard," and he run me down into the town. As we marched along the sidewalk, my right arm he did twist. I knew he wanted me to fight back, but I never did resist. "Have you had your army discharge?" I told him, yes I had. So then he pasted me with that loaded stick down across my head. I grabbed that stick and we had a little run and we had a little wrestle till another cop run up with a gun and jumped into the battle. He said, "If you don't drop that stick, black boy, it's me that's dropping you." So I figured to drop that loaded stick was the best thing that I could do. And they beat me about my head and face, and they left a bloody trail all down along the sidewalk to the iron door of the jail. They knocked me down upon the ground, and they poked me in the eyes. When I awoke next morning, I found that my eyes was blind. They dragged me to the courtroom. I could not see the judge, but he fined me $50 for raising all of the fuss. Doctor finally got there, but it took him 2 whole days. He handed me some drops and salve, and he told me to treat myself. Now you've heard my story. There's just one thing that I can't see: how you could treat a human being like they have treated me. I thought I fought on those islands to get rid of all of their kind, but I can see the fight much plainer now that I am blind. Now that same year in 1946, when most right-minded Americans, I hope, were being thoroughly disgusted by the pro-segregationist spewing of such Southern politicians as the Mississippi Congressman John Rankin and Mississippi Senator Theodore Bilbo. They're straight out of Central Casting, aren't they? And when these guys, I mean, they were the worst kinds of race hatred and not only anti-Semitism. You know, they'd always talk about Jews and Negroes in the same voice, that kind of stuff. And so it got to the point where their names were synonymous with the worst kinds of race hatred. People would actually talk about Bilboism and Rankinism. That's how notorious they were. Well, when they were at the height of their loudmouthed idiocy, there were 4 African-American brothers celebrating the return of 3 of them from the war. Now, this is in Freeport, Long Island, New York, not the Jim Crow South. Very important. And again, Woody sort of becomes one of their family. He casts himself as an imaginary 5th Ferguson brother in order to tell their story. Let's stop here and drink us a hot cup of coffee. That Long Island bus is a mighty long ride. We gotta keep your blood warm, our young brother Charles, because you've re-enlisted for quite a long time. You've been over the ocean and you've won your good record, but a private first class needs hot coffee the same as Alonzo and Joseph and just plain old Richard. Let's all drink a hot cup to each brother's name. Well, I hear this bus terminal has got a good tea room. Mr. Sklakis is the owner, there's his card on the wall. Let's sit over here and we'll wash down our troubles. And if you know a tall story, my brother, tell it all. But the waiter shakes his head, wipes his hands on his apron. He says there's no coffee in all that big urn. But in that glass gauge there, it looks like several inches. It looks like this tea room's got coffee to burn. So we made him a speech in a quiet, friendly manner. We didn't want to frighten those ladies over there, but he called for a cop on his phone on the sly, and the cop came and marched us out in the night air. The cop said that we had insulted the joint man. He made us line up with our faces to the wall. We laughed to ourselves as we stood there and listened to the man of law and order putting in his riot call. So then the cop turned around, he marched back to young Charlie, kicked him in the groin, shot him to the ground. The same bullet went through the brain of Alonzo, and the next bullet laid my poor brother Joseph down. My fourth brother Richard, he got hauled to the station, bowled out and lectured by the judge on his bench. He said that us Fergusons was just looking for trouble, and they hauled Richard off for 100-day stretch. This morning, 2 hearses rolled out towards the graveyard. One hearse had Alonzo, and the other took Charles. Charles's wife, Minnie, brought her 3 little children, and friends and relations in old borrowed cars. Nobody has told these 3 little boys yet. Everybody rides crying and shaking their heads. Nobody knows quite how to tell these 3 children that Jim Crow killed Alonzo and that Charles too is dead. Now the town that we ride through is not Rankin, Mississippi, or Bilbo's Jim Crow town of Washington, D.C., but it's greater New York, our most fair-minded city. In all this big land here and streets of the brave, who'll Who'll tell these three boys that their daddy is gone? He helped whip the fascists and the Nazis to death. Who will tell these three sons that it was Jim Crow coffee that killed several thousand, the same as their dad? Thank you. Right, well, I've succeeded in bringing you down about as low as you can get. So why don't you go fill up your teacups or whatever. You could pour in your vodka from your flask and your whiskey, and then come back and I'll tell you how the fight back begins, because you can only be brought so low for so long. So, see you in the next half.